I am pleased to welcome you to the penultimate session of the day and our final keynote, and a keynote that's very, very important to all of our work in SoTL. One of the reasons that we wanted to hold this conference and make our theme, as it was, conversations particularly, was to involve the student voice. And I am extraordinarily privileged to be on stage with two remarkable students, Anna Sepulveda and Ranee Drader. They are exceptional students. They are passionate about learning. We had an interesting conversation up here about how many degrees they will each get after the one that they're currently finishing. And they have a wide range of interests. So I'm going to introduce each of them briefly, have them talk about their sessions, and then we'll run this as a very informal conversation and then leave time at the end for you to ask questions of the students. So Anna is a fourth-year Bachelor of Sciences student majoring in health and minoring in chemistry and psychology.
Oh, hi guys. So like Marty said, my name's Anna. This is my fourth year at MRU. Like she said, Bachelor of Science, love health, really passionate about chemistry, learning, psychology. I love sociology as well. So I have a really wide range of interests. The SoTL research that we focused on with Dr. McCollum was kind of a accident almost, but a really good one at that. So what it focuses on is student perspective in chemistry, particularly with learning with using different technologies such as the iPad, some apps on it, as well as paper representations and model representations of just the basic molecular shapes. So yeah, we did the research on that, got some student feedback, and we're in the process of getting our paper finished. So if you guys have any questions, be happy to answer them. Later. Yes.
And Ranee, can you give us a brief description of where you are and where your project is?
So my name is Ranee Drader. I'm in my third year of the Bachelor of Education program. I'm doing a double minor in science and humanities. I also have a broad range of interests. And right now what our research is focusing on is how to bridge the gap that student teachers or teacher candidates are experiencing between what they're learning in their classes at university and what they're actually seeing and doing in their practicum and in their school placements. So how they've, Gladys and Kevin, have chosen to address this is through implementing in-school seminars. And what we're looking at in these seminars is how it's helped the teacher candidates integrate and reflect on their theory and practice and what they're doing in the classroom, and also how overlapping of communities of practice also play a role in that.
So I want to take you back to the very start of your experience in SoTL, and I'm curious, what led to your SoTL project? Was it personal interest? Was it encouragement from others? Did somebody kidnap you in the night? Yeah. Maybe Anna, you can start us off, and then you can chime in.
Sure. So from the beginning, I knew I wanted to get involved in research at school, obviously, and I love that sort of aspect of the university experience. However, I did not think that I was going to get a chance to do it so early on. I thought I was going to have to do it third and fourth year and then maybe pursue a graduate degree after that or something along those lines. But fortunately, my first research experience kind of landed on my lap during one of Organic Chemistry 2 lectures. After class, we were just talking and kind of got into talking about research and undergraduate research in particular, and Brett was doing a project at the moment. He needed some people to do data analysis. Myself and my research partner, who is currently at UBC now, Yuritzel, said, oh, okay, let's do it, we're up for it. So we started doing data analysis. From that, we kind of developed our own questions about the data. We're like, oh, but like this is awesome, but we're wondering what are the students thinking, like while they're using the iPads, while they're using the papers, like why are they touching the iPads more than they're touching the paper? So that kind of developed into the new research project that we have now, and yeah, like it's been a roller coaster ride. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned tons, and really like appreciate what SoTL is now, and I had no idea that it existed beforehand, to be honest, but it's a fantastic field of research, and I really, really, really enjoyed doing research in SoTL, so yeah.
Okay. I had a bit of a different experience. I wasn't necessarily looking for doing research in my undergraduate year. I didn't really know about being able to do research. Even as a graduate student, I was unaware about universities in general. So I was approached by Kevin after my first year to help them with their project and to start conducting research. And I was pretty excited. I got up, I think I ran and danced around a little bit, called my mom. So it's been an amazing experience. And I didn't know about SoTL either. But yeah, throughout my research, this has really pushed me and furthered my passion for continuing with different research projects and all stuff. So,
can I get you to expand on that a little bit, Ranee? What have you gained from your participation in the SoTL project?
I have gained a lot. Going off of sort of just what I had just said, as I think one of the largest things is in my future, I guess. I never really thought that I would be interested in pursuing graduate schooling or anything. I wasn't even 100% sure about going to school in the first place, and what I wanted to do. Kind of want to be a teacher, kind of want to be this, and I think that it's just really helped further my passion for teaching and my passion for. I don't want to just settle. I guess I want to keep moving forward, and I never really had that before, so yeah.
Nice. And Anna?
Oh man, I could list things on and on forever and ever. Honestly, apart from the whole like scientific process, conducting your own research, doing lit reviews, referencing, like understanding what that process is all about.
Referencing? See?
Referencing, oh my God, I know. Oh, there's a mic there, I'm sorry. It's like near and dear to my heart, right? Yeah, learning that referencing is a conversation between academics and that it's not just, crap, I have to do all this referencing work. Anyways, so that is definitely a big one. It's something that kind of like clicks and you're like, oh, so that's what we use at APA. Awesome. Anyways, that's definitely a huge one. Apart from that, just life skills like time management, crazy time management, learning how to prioritize, learning that setbacks are okay, celebrating your successes, because honestly, like, after you finish that project and you're done transcribing, I don't know how many interviews, like, oh my God, it feels so good to be done. Because at first you're like, okay, transcribing, and then like 3 interviews in, you're like, oh my God, right? So yeah, it's been, like I said at the beginning, it's been a great roller coaster ride. I've learned tons, not only from the academic side, but skills that are going to be transferable to anything I do for the rest of my life. So I really appreciate that.
You alluded to some of this with transcribing, but what have been the most challenging aspects?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you can start this.
So I think just from purely our protocol, our research protocol, we had some technical difficulties at the beginning, but we got those sorted pretty quick. After the first couple of interviews, we're like, all right, we got this. I guess transcribing and finding the time to transcribe and like really dedicate it, and not just transcribe and like listening to the interviews, but sitting down and understanding and hearing what the people, like the students were saying, the participants were saying, was really, really challenging for me as a full-time student who also volunteers and works and has extracurriculars. So that was one of the hardest parts. Got through it, yes. But yeah, and that kind of leads into just balancing everything, balancing the research project, balancing my other classes, balancing work life, balancing spending time with my family even, because I really, really was so busy that I came home on Sundays and I'd sit down and study. Like I'd lock myself in my room, and after a while I was like, I can't, I need to have a nice like even playfield here in order to stay sane for the rest of the year. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the, if not most like biggest challenges or hardships when you're doing undergraduate research, is learning how to time manage and prioritize.
Yeah, I can also speak to that because my first year doing this, I was the vice president of the Education Undergraduate Society. I had another job, a supervisor position at a grocery store, and then I was doing research on top of that, on top of taking a full course load. And it was, I kind of managed, but I sort of realized coming into this year that it was actually unhealthy what I was doing, and I wasn't taking any time for myself, and I had life issues that happen, and I really decided to look at what I was doing at home and what I'm doing at school and learn to prioritize a bit more. I quit my other job and learned to take more time for myself and more time for the things that I need to do as well. So although it's been a bit of a challenge, especially in my first year, I feel like it's also really benefited me as a person and learning to take that time. I always got so frustrated. People would be like, Renee, you're taking on too much. Renee, you need to slow down. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? This is great. I'm going. But I kind of realized how it was affecting me in my personal life, and it was affecting my stress level, or lots of stuff. The other thing, I spoke a bit about it in our presentation earlier this morning about one of the challenges is the dual role. And I didn't really notice it as much until I got into the class, into Gladys's and Kevin's classroom this past semester, because I wasn't in one of their classes the first year we were doing research together. So I was really aware that, okay, so now I'm stepping into a student role, and the relationship, although it's there, I need to approach it differently. And I was, I think, too aware of that, and too aware of my peers that were around me and how they were aware of our relationship as well. So I'm generally, I don't know if it sounds bad, but I try to take a leadership role in a lot of my classes. I always try to participate. I'm usually the first one to volunteer. I'm the first one with my hand up, and I'm very passionate for what I do, and I found that I was actually holding myself back, which is unfortunate because math and science, I love science in particular, and math's great too, Gladys. But those are the courses where I felt like I should have been like shining the most, and I wasn't, and I really felt that.
Did you encounter that as well?
I haven't quite taken any, I don't know, we haven't taken any more classes together after we started the data analysis, so not quite, except for my research partner and I decided to pursue an independent projects class where we basically get credit for doing the research project, but that was on a supervisor student level. However, I totally understand what you mean. I think I would have troubles with that as well if I did encounter a situation like that, and I am most certainly that type of person too. I hate awkward silences. Even if I don't know the answer, I'll shout something out because I'm wrong, okay, I'm wrong. I'll not answer that again, and then I know what the right question is, right? So yeah, I think it's fine to take a leadership role in the classroom, and I don't think you should be ashamed of that ever, because I think it's a great asset to have, and but I think that if I was in that situation, I might kind of hold myself back a little bit and be like, oh, maybe I'm just gonna keep quiet for today and hold my stress ball and deal with the awkward silence.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, right, that we're placing students in these dual roles, especially when they're also doing research on their peer group. And so you're actually reading transcripts of people, even if you don't know who they are exactly in some cases. Mm-hmm. How does that feel as student researchers?
Do you want to go?
Yeah.
Or have time to think?
Yeah,
this was a question I didn't prep them.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's not awkward, but it's just kind of like, oh, you were my research participant, because I see the people that I interviewed all the time in the hallway, or I'll see them in the biology study room or in the chemistry study room, and I generally, I'm a nice human being. I'll say hi. I'll be like, hey, how's your semester going? But it's definitely a very weird dynamic to have, because it's oh, you were that guy that said the thing, and like, yes, you were such a great participant. And then sometimes it's like, oh, you didn't talk too much, like, oh, you know, that sort of thing. And I think when we first started doing data analysis, the participant pool of that particular year is the people that are in my year. So it's like majority of the people, well, not majority, but like a good portion of the videos that we watched for the data analysis were some of my friends from class. So I was like, oh, this is kind of okay. Like, I'm just gonna just ignore everything else and just keep doing my ticks, right? But yeah, it's definitely a weird dynamic having the people around you, but it's also nice as well because you get to kind of, in a sense, build a relationship with your participants, or maybe that's my imaginary world where I think I have friendly relationships with my participants obviously once the study has been done, but they're there and you can't ignore them because then you're just mean. So
I like how you mentioned you saw them in the hallways, because I remembered I had that realization once when I went up to them and I'm like, I feel I know them so well. I've listened to them in their seminars, I've done some interviews, I've read their journals, and I'm like, hey guys, and they're like, oh, who are you again? So it's like, I feel like I've learned so much from them, and so, but they haven't necessarily learned a lot from me. But I actually do enjoy being able to look at what, they're not my direct peers because they're not in my year, they're the year before me and the year after me. So I have learned so much from them, and I've been able to look at the things that they're saying and start applying it to myself as well, or start to think about, huh, that's interesting. I didn't think of it that way, and it sort of really helped me develop my own teaching philosophy and worldview and all that. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. You kind of learn from the participants, you learn about yourself and your learning style and that sort of thing, and it's very interesting. And it's also interesting to see, like, if you're in the chem study room or in the bio study room and they just happen to be there and you just happen to know that they're more of a visual or a kinesthetic learner and they're sitting there trying to read a textbook, it's like, you know what, like, how about we look at these models, right? Because they're right there for you. And it's funny knowing a little bit, or having that insight, maybe they don't realize it, but having seen the videos and having done the transcripts and the data analysis, like knowing that they would maybe prefer or learn it better in a certain way, is again, it's that challenge of being like approaching them without freaking them out and being like, hey, well, like, yeah, I think it's a little bit easier if you're more of a senior student in a senior student role, because if they're just talking, they're like, oh my God, this anatomy test is gonna be so hard, and you can just be like, oh, like, I totally used all the models when I was in my second year and taking anatomy, like, you guys should try that, and it usually works. But I think that aspect of you having learned all this stuff from them, not only just about yourself, but just about like whatever your research is focusing on, kind of puts a lot of things in perspective, and it's things that you want to maybe pass on to them, but maybe they don't know that you want to pass it on to them. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I hope you guys kind of get my drift.
Okay. What surprised you most about the research?
Kind of spoke a bit about it again, but the difference between the first years and the third years and their responses to our prompts in the interviews and the in-school seminars. And the third years, if I hadn't have known that they were in a year ahead of me, I would have thought, based on their responses, that they were the first years and the first years were the third years. And it just really, it was shocking and it was frustrating for professors. I had to calm them down a little bit, but I really think it just really speaks to having those interventions in the first year and just telling them what you're looking for and just taking that approach. Whereas, yeah, they're in the schools for the first time, so they're starting to develop that philosophy, so they have that background, they have that support. Whereas the third years, they went 2 years in the school once a week where they have that disconnect, and they're starting to learn their own philosophies and how they're interacting with the students, but they're learning it sort of on their own more so. without that support, and it was really evident in their responses. It was astounding, actually.
Interesting. And Anna?
That's really cool. I just want to say that. I think for me, it was once we got to the whole like transcription / data analysis, and like it was kind of seeing what I thought was going to happen coming true. It's like having a dream come true right in front of you. You're just like, yes, this is what I thought was going to happen. I'm not crazy. So I think that's one of the parts that most surprised me, and I think also actually seeing how different people learn differently, and seeing them interact with these different, I guess, technologies or different things that they can play with to learn molecular geometry in particular. And I guess I had this kind of an epiphany around last year when we decided to go forth with this project, and it was like, this is so applicable on all fields. Like, you need these skills, they're so transferable, yet there's not enough work done to develop them, and there's only that few handful of people that are just, it's almost innate to them that they can just do it, and you're just like, oh my God, like how did you learn? Please tell me, like I wanna learn how you learn so I can tell other people to develop those skills. Yeah. So I think like seeing that handful of people, and then also the comparison between like, I guess the sample, so if you had like the 2 people that were just fantastic at doing the matching questions, and they were the odd ones out, and it was just like the responses were almost exactly the same, like that was like a little bit creepy and freaky to me, but I was like, whoa, like we're onto something here, this is great. So I think just having that kind of pop out, that epiphany light bulb moment, that was awesome.
It's kind of like having, going through and doing the interviews when the words, teacher mindset started popping up, and it was really, really interesting because nobody had ever used it before, and they're talking about it in the sense of in-school seminars and how their mindset completely changed when they're in there, and there was no guidance on them thinking like that, and it was really surprising because going from where I was in my first year, they weren't necessarily seminars, I don't know what to call them, they were kind of like check-ins on how things were going, and it was completely different. We were in the university, we were, relaxed or kind of talking, and I don't know, you were just in that mindset of being a student, and just listening to first years talking about how they were just able to learn in this completely different mindset, and how that affected them in their learning, and being able to make these connections more like easily. I don't know. It was really surprising. I think it surprised Gladys and Kevin as well. I don't know if that was something that they were necessarily looking for, but it was throughout almost all of the interviews. I think everyone actually.
So, and again, this is an unscripted one. But I'm curious about, when did you feel that you had a researcher mindset? What kind of moments brought the researcher mindset on? Because you talked about student mindset, right?
I don't know when exactly that would have been. I think it took a little bit of time to develop, and I think that as my confidence grew, I guess, and my ability as a researcher, because at first if I was doing the transcripts, I was really unsure of what I was doing, but kind of after I got more confident, I was actually starting to really, really listen, and to take that opportunity to make those connections myself with what they're saying. So I'm not sure exactly when that happened, but it did take a little bit.
I think for me is when I started getting really excited about like data analysis. I was like, yes, gotta read my transcripts. I'm so excited. Gonna put all these themes in my papers, and I have highlighters, and I'm just, this is my research folder. Like, I think that was pretty much it for me. And then we had a really awesome moment where we finally figured out, okay, how are we gonna put this in a place, like one place where it's not going to be like sticky notes all over a room and then me covered in sticky notes and then like yarn going from sticky note to sticky note and like all over, and then you're just stuck in this web. And then we went to this en vivo kind of like a, what was it?
Workshop.
Yeah, it was an en vivo workshop, and that was a software that we used for some of the data analysis, and just like being there and being like, oh yes, this is going to be so great, like just being really, really, really excited. I think that's the moment where it just kind of clicked for me, because when we did the interviews, it just kind of felt like, okay, we were just doing the steps, but once you get to that point where it's like data analysis and you're seeing all the trends and you're seeing what your predictions were like there, and you're seeing the odd ones out that maybe weren't in your predictions, that sort of thing, that's when I was like, oh my God, like this is awesome.
It's actually funny, I experienced that as well, because we didn't even start doing data analysis until this year, so full year later, and I was so excited, I couldn't wait. Finally I get to read these and make those connections and actually learn what coding means. They keep talking about it, I have no idea what they're talking about, but yeah, it was really exciting.
Those awkward, like, just smile and nod moments. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Coding, yeah.
Yeah, don't
Morse.
know what that is.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Excellent. Can I ask you one more unscripted one? And then I promise that's the last one.
Okay.
So you talked about surprises in the research. What surprised you about yourself and your experience as researchers? If anything. That's a prediction. I don't know.
I think, I'm not sure if, I don't really know how to word this. I think it's something that I really appreciated from Gladys and Kevin was a lot of the times at the beginning they'd be like, we want your input and we want this from you, and I was kind of like, I don't know what I could offer you, and that really intimidated me, and yeah, it made me really nervous, but sort of working with them the past just over a year now, and they really have shown me how I can actually add value, and I think that has been something that has surprised me and has been really great actually, because now I feel like more confident that I can actually add something, and I do add value to the research, and yeah, I think that's really mainly it.
It's a really hard question. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry.
I think like what was surprising to me as an undergrad researcher was getting all this freedom to do what you wanted to do. Like, it's your project, I'm just the supervisor, we want you guys to take reign and go out and do it. Like, just having that and being like, oh my God, like I've never done this before, like what if I get it wrong? Like, oh my goodness. Like, I think just having all that freedom and I mean, it was structured freedom, definitely, but just being able to say like, okay, this is what I think, and then having somebody almost like validate what you're saying and being like, oh, like I've never thought of it that way before, and you're just like, oh, like I just added value to this research project, and it's from my perspective, which is important. This is good. So yeah, I think it kind of goes along with what Ranee said, but definitely, yeah.
And I think that actually makes a nice surprise transition to the last question, which is, what advice would you give faculty who want to involve students in SoTL research? What's made the difference for you in making it successful? What would you tell these people who are anxiously awaiting the possibility of involving students in their research about how to do it?
Do you want me to go first? Okay, sure. I think realizing that your students are still undergrads and they might not know, realizing that your students have a life outside of school and being very flexible, realizing that you are not only dealing with a brand new research project, research mind, because most undergrad students don't get a research opportunity. They'll only encounter it once they get into their senior years or grad school maybe even, and then just a bit of concepts that you learn in labs or in classes about the scientific method and statistics, about ways of doing research and that sort of thing. So that just keep that in mind. It's something that's brand new to not all of us, but some of us, and be very patient. And definitely, I think, like, I think for me, one of the things that has helped me the most and that I've built a lot of knowledge around and has made me better, not only as a student, but as I would even call myself a researcher, is constructive criticism and being honest. And that comes along with all the flexibility and everything else. But you guys, like, it's really important that you do give awesome feedback to your students and be critical and be honest, because that's what we are going to encounter once we graduate and we leave the institutions, whether that's going out into grad school or professional school or whatever it is that your students might be pursuing afterwards. It's not like a happy, dandy, fluffy world out there. Like, you are going to get criticized, so also be critical of that and be conscious of that, all while like kind of thinking and kind of, I guess, knowing that your students are still undergraduates and that we're just learning. Yeah. Really, it's all about the learning process. So
Yeah, that was going to be my main point. Thank you. But yeah, so on top of that, I'm trying to think of something to say now. One thing that I think is really important, and it goes back to one of the first keynote speakers actually shared, I believe, was that the relationship that you develop is a lot different than a professor-student relationship. I mean, there's still all those professional boundaries. However, I've gotten to know Gladys and Kevin on a more personal level, and as researchers and all those things. And I don't know, I think it's just great to be open to that, and to not have that I'm the professor and you are my minion, and
yes.
And, but to be able to have that relationship where I feel like I've felt really validated in my own abilities through that, and yeah. I don't really know
It
what else to
just
say on
opens
that.
up communication, and it would make your students feel comfortable with bringing up new ideas and feeling like they're not going to get shut down immediately. So, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
So there was the comments earlier talking about research mindset. So I was curious, this morning you talked about how the teacher mindset versus the student mindset was affected by location. So in both cases, you're on campus for your research as well as your coursework. But maybe you had space that you conducted your research. So I was wondering if you could talk about how spaces on campus influenced your research mindset, whether that was a research office that you had to use or study space that you used.
I have an immediate answer for this one if you need to think about it for a bit.
I have one too.
So I am very much space, color oriented, kind of a bit too organized in my notes, I think, sometimes. But it's only in that aspect. Some parts of my life are not, like my closet, not very organized. But anyway, so like I said, very space oriented for me. So I have places on campus where I know if I need to focus, I will go sit at the one booth, or I have a couple booths in the library that I like, and those are for my like writing, hard studying, like reading sessions that I'm gonna sit there for 4 hours and just do it and read papers and highlight and drink coffee and take breaks and that sort of thing. So definitely, like Brett said, it's when I'm in those spaces, I'm in that mindset, like I am working really hard, I'm studying, I'm learning, this is what I'm doing right now, this is what my focus is at. As for the research, we had a research office available to us where we conducted our interviews. Having that space available to just go up there, be alone, it was quiet, to do your transcripts, to do your coding was fantastic to have, because it's a place where you can sit down and you're like, this is what I'm gonna do for the next 3 hours. I'm gonna do a transcript of an interview, and I'm here, and that's all I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna shut everything else out, and it's a quiet space where I can actually focus on just doing that and not have any interruptions of people coming by and saying hello or anything like that. So I think spaces are crucial, like 100% crucial. Like if you can't set up a place where you're going to be 100% dedicated to either your data analysis or your research, it makes it really hard. I know because I tried to do some of the data analysis at home and I couldn't sit down and focus. I can't even study at home. That's why I had to stay at school till like late hours of the night when it's exam season or when I have to write papers or that sort of thing. I can't do it at home. So I think spaces are crucial, definitely. So if you decide to embark on research projects with students, I think that's something that you could add if you can either arrange for a space where your students can go and focus on that. I think it's fantastic. It certainly has helped us in our research. So,
actually, that's a really interesting question because I never really thought about it, but I have definitely noticed a difference. I do have an office where I get to do my research in the education offices, and I didn't at first, although I had a little cubicle and I put my name on it and claimed it as my own. Right now I'm in the middle of my practicum and I'm going all out in schools, and then I'm trying to do my work at home on the computer, and I did it a little bit as well throughout the semester, but there is a difference where when I'm in the education offices, I feel a little bit more professional. I feel more focused. I feel like I'm there to get my work done. I'm there to sit down. There's just that aspect to it. And then I go to my house and I just have such a hard time focusing. I really have to break it down and my cat comes. I love my cat. She's really distracting. I'm like, oh man, I really need to clean this up. And then there's all these other things that are coming to my mind. And even right now in my practicum, I'm like, okay, I need to sit down. I need to get this ready. I need to get this ready for my lesson tomorrow. But if I actually take it to the school and I'm in the offices, I don't have that extra stuff on my head. I'm just there to do work. So yes, there is a difference, I would say, definitely.
Interesting. Other questions? It's a race. Karen's next.
Sounds like both of you got involved with this kind of by accident, in that instructors came to you to talk to you about if you'd like to get involved in this work. Now, for faculty members who might not have a particular student in mind who they would like to have involved, what would you say are the key qualities that should be considered when a faculty member is thinking about what students to invite to become involved?
do you want to think about it?
I think that there's a lot of qualities that are necessary. I think that one thing that we talked a lot about with the dual role that we do have as students and as a researcher, and it can be quite difficult. I don't know necessarily how you'd be able to gauge whether a student has that ability to balance those. But that is definitely something to keep in mind, I guess, when considering a student.
I think students that take the first step and approach faculty, that's like top, like that's like a really expensive car right there. So it's the students that you want with you doing the research. The first top line that I would consider are students that want to do research, because it means that they want to be there. It's not like, oh, like they asked me, I guess I'm going to do it just to add it to my resume, right? So I think that's one of the key aspects right there. So having students that are passionate about research and that want to do research. So number one. For students that don't know that there's research available, because there is a lot of them, trust me. There's been so many people that are like, you're involved in research? What? I didn't know we had research here. And I'm like, oh my God, just talk. Like I had a friend in one of my biology classes, and he was like, how did you get involved? Like, what did you do? And I was like, just talk to your profs. Like, just go up and ask them, like, what are you doing? What are you researching? And he's actually doing research right now with one of the faculty members on, it's not coming to me, Purkinje cells in the cerebellum. So he's like doing antibiotic treatments on these like cut up brains basically, and he gets to do everything in the lab. So like, how cool is that as an undergraduate to get to say, I got to cut up brains and learn how to put antibiotic tagging on them. Like, that's crazy. And all he had to do was go talk to the professor. So I think getting students, I guess, or providing the information that, yeah, research is out there. I love professors that start off their first day of classes saying, okay, this is what I did my dissertation on, and this is what my research right now is focusing on. Just at the beginning of class, throw it out there. Some students might listen, some students might not, but the ones that matter are the ones who listen and the ones that you get that message across. If it's one prof that does it, I feel like if one student grasps the concept, okay, there's research going on here, and then they happen to fall in love with the class and the professor is great and they go talk to them and then they might end up in research, definitely that. And then as well as just looking at your classroom dynamics. You're going to have students that are going to be extroverts, you're going to have introverts, you're going to have shy people, you're going to have mean people. It just happens. Like, it's in all classrooms. So look for the people that enjoy learning the subject. Look for people that participate. Look for people that are excited. Look for people that come and see you during your office hours, that ask you questions, that ask questions in class, that interact with students. It doesn't have to be people that are doing fantastic in a course, because sometimes grades don't reflect what students want and what they have learned and the knowledge that they have, right? And I feel like that pressure of like, oh, like I can't do research because I'm not good enough, it's on a lot of students, and that's why some students don't approach it, and that's why you kind of have to probe those people, find those people to get them to come to you or get involved with the institution, and just let them know, you know what? You might just screw up one of your courses. It's totally okay. Like, life is gonna be fine. You might screw up one of your midterms. Actually, Brett knows this because I cried about my first midterm in Organic Chemistry 1 because I almost failed it, and I still finished the class with a pretty good grade. And just the fact that he was like, you know what, it's gonna be okay, like, that kind of gets onto a whole other subject. But definitely look for the students that are there to learn, that have a passion about learning. They're passionate about gaining knowledge. Those are the students that you want with you in your research, because they're the ones that are going to pose questions. They're going to be the ones that are critically thinking. They're going to be the ones that are going to maybe challenge your ideas, which I know is like, whoo, undergraduate students challenging what I think. And I've had those moments with profs too, and you're just like, I'm sorry, like, oh. But you know what? Yeah, I think that's key. Just finding students that are passionate about learning, that have like a wanting to research. They just want to learn. So, yeah. Sorry, that went on for too long.
That's okay. You're passionate about learning.
I love people.
Hi. So I really enjoyed your talk. I also went to Brett's talk yesterday where he was talking about the sort of different keys to, you know, having a successful research assistant faculty member relationship. And so I just wanted to check with you two again about two of the things he talked about. So his first, and I think because you're coming from different perspectives, maybe, he talked about the importance of having a critical mass of research assistants working with you. So he suggested having 2 research assistants, rather than just having 1 research assistant. So I'm guessing like one of you is a 1 and one of you is a 2. So there's that question. And then the other thing was whether or not, because I'm assuming, Anna, that this was your case since you were working with Brett, but Ranee, so did Gladys and Kevin sort of like schedule out like weekly meetings with you and sort of like learning plans and learning outcomes through the project?
Yeah, especially in the first year of the project, we did have weekly meetings, and sometimes I met with them more than just that. We actually have hired a second RA though for this year, and there has actually been some challenges with that as well, because I've been with them for a year. We have somebody else who's kind of stepping in on this, I don't know, the relationships we've already developed between the three of us, and even the research itself is in a later stage, so there have been some challenges with that. I'm trying to think because I forgot what I was going to say. I forget what I was going to say.
Maybe give you a pause and Anna.
Yeah,
so
sure.
What did you see as either benefits or challenges of working with another student on the project, or students?
I was really lucky to have Yuritsa as my research partner. We had known each other. We were in the class together, obviously, and we knew each other from volunteering. And she is just an awesome human being, and I just love her to pieces. She's great. She definitely made it easier, and I think we were there for each other for those moments. We were like, especially when we were transcribing, like what are we even, like what is our research question? Like what are we doing? Like why am I even spending 3 hours of my life typing out what this person is saying? Like those moments that you just kind of doubt what you're even trying to accomplish. We were there for each other in those moments. So I feel like having that second person with you definitely adds to your whole research experience. And not to mention the whole, like, it's shared work. So again, undergraduate students, we have a lot of stuff going on. Having a second person to help you out with transcription, for example, is a huge, huge, huge advantage. I cannot stress that enough. Yeah. I think the main difference between, I guess, what Ranee is doing and what my experience was is that Yuritsa and I were involved from the beginning. We started doing the same data analysis. The day that we spoke to Brett after class, we were talking about application to grad school and professional school, and we're like, there's a there's a publications component in that, like in the application. Like, do they expect us to have something published as undergraduates? Like, is that even possible here at Mount Royal? And then that's when we started. But the key point here is that we started together and we learned everything together. So I think that made it a lot easier. Bringing new people in to learn it from the beginning and establish those boundaries and learn who they are as a person, if you didn't know them, is definitely a challenge on its own. But I definitely believe that it's very beneficial to have extra people there. And not only that, but you're providing more students with the opportunity to learn about the research. So even if it's just like, if you hire somebody, just get them to do a bit of reading on their own. Like, I'm going to use my friend again as an example, the guy that got involved with the cerebellum research. Before he even started doing all the cuts and all the fun dyes and stuff, he read about 20 papers on chick embryo brain research and just read reviews on it and stuff. And he had weekly meetings with the faculty members and just talked about it. So I think having people just do a bit of lit review and know what they're getting into at the beginning, if it's not like just a purely like you just need to analyze these numbers or like take how many times they're touching a piece of paper or something like that, I think is highly beneficial. But I would definitely recommend that say that a group effort is better than just one person if you can do that. And it's also two minds. Two different ways of thinking, so you're adding another perspective. It's not just you and your supervisor, and that's always beneficial in research. You always want to be critical about what your standpoints are and have people question you, because that's when you get the best results. So.
Definitely, and I think that's sort of the thought behind hiring the second RA, because we didn't know that the study was going to be as long as it was, I believe. It's going on 5 years. I think it was just going to be a 1-year thing. The second RA was hired, and he had done work for Gladys and Kevin before, so they knew that he was competent, and to be coming into this time where he is able to sort of just, pick it up and continue with it. But again, there are challenges, like I was saying, this is what I forgot to say, was when I first started, we did have weekly meetings, and there was a lot of scaffolding, and there was a lot of support for myself as a beginning researcher. And now that I'm in my the second year of it, I know what I'm doing more, I'm more confident in it, and we're all crazy busy because it's practicum. So that support has kind of been able to be taken off a bit, where I'm more independent, and they're aware of that. So bringing the second RA into this time, we were hoping for somebody who has those strengths, that they're able to sort of continue on with it, but there still is that challenge there that he doesn't have quite the same support that I would have had, and I've been trying to really bridge that myself, but it's been difficult. However, in saying that, I do also really like having another person, another student to talk to and to think, what's your opinion on this, or I coded it this way, how did you code it, and sort of being able to compare and contrast the things that we're noticing, and having that peer there. And I did know him. He's actually a good friend of mine as well, so we also have a relationship. So
I'm just going to quickly add a small point to that too. For the whole like undergrad part, because we're not graduate students, we're going to be graduating, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the research project is going to be done, or that there's no more research to be done. So I think a really interesting part of hiring new people is also letting your research assistant and your students that are under your wing teach the new people. Like, we have experience from the student perspective, so we can teach them things that maybe you might not necessarily have too much insight about, like, okay, so if you're gonna start doing this lit review, I would recommend doing this, or I have Margie's email, maybe you should email Margie and set up an appointment with her, and maybe she can help you out, right? So don't be scared to hire brand new students to take on the new role, and don't be scared of letting the students that have done research with you help you in that transition. Because that's the huge part about undergraduate. We don't get to graduate with the research project. We graduate and the research project stays most of the time. So it's finding those people that are willing to.
It's funny that you say that, because that was exactly my experience. When I first heard that we were going to be hiring a second RA, they're like, we'll look at people in their first, second year, third year, and I was like, oh my God, somebody in their first year. So I bought a book and I went through it about action research, and I was making little notes and having all these sticky things because I really wanted to help mentor them, and I was worried about going into practicum and not having that time. And actually I was pretty excited for that opportunity, because I really wanted to be able to share the knowledge that I've gained through it, and be able to support them with that. So.
I'm going to close off questions there. I'm sorry, but we have other things to do. I have learned a tremendous amount in our private conversations, and even more on stage with you, and I'm deeply appreciative of your taking the time to share this with us. So a big round of applause.